Well, third video segment of the research project lesson. This third segment is going to be split up into two videos, and because it's pretty extensive and it all deals with once you've done your internet research, now you have a list of websites either listed on Google or Bing or your other search engines, and you've got to figure out which websites are the best ones to use. So we need to evaluate the sources to make sure that they're legitimate sources. So there's a multi-step process that this entails that I want to go through with you. Again, so you've come up with sources from using multiple searches on your search engines, and you've got a lot of information ahead of you and in front of you in the form of a list of different websites. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but the websites are going to display in the order in which the phrase or words that you searched are the most cross-referenced. So Wikipedia comes up first because what it does is it cross-references other websites, with the exception of advertisement sites, that have the most amount of links to that page. So there are several links back to the Wikipedia pages, and that is why Wikipedia comes up first, because other web sources are citing Wikipedia. That's why we try to avoid Wikipedia and have you use those primary sources that you can find that information on. So the first step is we're gonna talk about evaluating these sources. This is probably the most extensive part of the research process, and it's the most tedious, and it's the one that most students, I would say 99% of students, don't even take the time to bother to do. They don't look for these important aspects of web source to even figure out if they should put it down as a source, a legitimate source in their research project. There are a number of things that you need to look for before considering using that source and calling it a good source in your project. The first thing is the type of the source. The source or the provider of the website is identified again by looking at the URL, okay? And that's the URL domain. You're looking at the suffix, and that is the dot whatever that comes at the end of your website. And there, I've listed some examples, and we'll discuss them here as follows. If it's something.edu, these are an educational site. If you go to sc4.edu, that's an educational site or a college or university site. They tend to be more academic. So those are usually good sites. .coms are your most common sites. They're commercial sites. They are used through businesses or companies, but it means that it's a commercial, usually for-profit site. .gov, these are non-military government agency sites. Whitehouse.gov, that's a government site. .mil are military sites. .net, these are networks and internet service providers. These are less common, but they are out there, but you won't run into them quite as often. .int, an international organization. .org, you'll see more common. You see those a lot with your .coms. It means that it's a non-profit, non-academic, and non-governmental organization. So it's typically more of a universal, non-biased site. If the website has a suffix with a country abbreviation, and I put the example of .uk or .ca, we'll see those commonly used because they're English-speaking countries, then it means that the website is produced and hosted in that country. These suffixes are important because they can give you an idea as to what the site's angle is. Again, .com sites are usually business sites. They tend to have more of a bias because they're trying to make money. So they're trying to get a lot of foot traffic because either through hits or through subscriptions, they're making money. More reliable sources are the .edus, the .govs, and the .orgs. They're typically created and maintained to provide information just to give people information, not to sell you something. The next step is authority. Again, you can put anything on the internet, and they don't really prevent you from doing so. So you need to look for the reliability of the website. Students should look for information on the author or the authors, including the education level, the experience of the person writing or creating the website. Where do they work? What kind of certificates or degrees do these people hold who've created these? Look at their email address. Does it look like just a regular email address, or does it look like a professional email address? Look for biographical information. What does it tell you about the author? What kind of affiliations? So what other organizations are these authors involved in? The more academic, scholarly, or basically just associated with other academic groups the author is, the better the information provided should be. Next thing is accuracy. Again, just because it's on the internet does not mean it's truthful or factual. I make this joke a lot, but it's real. You can't just trust it because you saw it online. There are several things to look for to figure out how accurate something is. Students should look for detailed explanations of the topic that they're researching. The information should be factual and detailed to provide solid knowledge, okay? Not just some survey or some basic information, but it should be very detailed. You want to cross-reference your findings to make sure that your facts are consistent between different resources and different authors. If you're seeing consistency between websites and authors, it's probably good information. If you're only coming up with this one line of information one time, you may not want to rely on that information. Any obvious factual errors, okay, look for spelling, grammar errors, or just basic factual errors should be a big red flag to tell you not to use this source. Next thing is currency. Currency is once something is posted, you've got to know that it's always there, okay? That doesn't mean that it's the most recently posted or updated website. The author might have decided to move on to a different site or went on to publish new material and didn't update this original site, so it could be old. You need to look for publication dates, usually found at the bottom of the websites. The more current it is, the better of a chance that you have at knowing that it's been recently updated. Also, you can look for revision dates to see that it's being maintained on a consistent basis. The other things that you want to look out for are outdated sources that the author is using. This means that the author has referenced a source that is very old. That doesn't mean that it's a bad source, but if you see the author using primarily sources that are older, they might not have the most up-to-date information to provide for you. So you might not want to trust that particular page. The exception is primary sources. Now, primary sources are something that come directly from a moment in history. I use the example of a letter written by George Washington himself. That's considered a primary source. He was there and he documented the occurrence. Those are your best sources. Secondary sources, dissertations, academic publications, they should also be pretty current. Okay, and those are like scholarly journals or papers that maybe a PhD student has written. You also want to look for dead-end web links. This means that if you click on a link to a website that's supposedly a supporting website of the source you're using and it doesn't work, and you find that there are several of these not working, that site is probably not the best one to use because they're not getting their information from properly maintained websites. So these first few things that we just discussed in this video, this is the first half of what you need to do to determine the legitimacy and evaluate the sources before you decide to start taking notes and use these sources for information. Segment 2 will have a few more tips to follow. Thank you.